To plan your entire life and to see it all go crumbling before you because someone else built something dodgy and because you have less rights than if you'd bought a bad toaster. It's an impossible situation to be in, and we are just desperate for someone to work that out and to help us.
Rhys Lipman is hopeful it could be Michael Gove who helps them with the cladding problem. The Community Secretary went after housing developers today, deriding them as indecent for not picking up the bill for faulty cladding and insisting they now cough up another £4 billion to help countless Britons like Rhys.
I am constantly trying to work out ways to protect my partner from a bankruptcy that I might be facing. The pressure and the anxiety of it every single day is horrible. You are constantly surrounded by the idea that your life is in the hands of someone else.
Save state, Gove.
Battle cries and hyperbole. Gove was making some pretty big claims about what he was going to do.
Leaseholders are shouldering a desperately unfair burden. They're blameless, and it is morally wrong that they should be the ones asked to pay the price.
There were lots of threats, lots of tweets, lots of tough talk.
To those who missold dangerous products like cladding or insulation, to those who cut corners to save cash as they developed or refurbished people's homes, and to those who sought to profiteer from the consequences of the Grenfell tragedy, we are coming for you.
And it's developers that are top of that list, not least because of how much they've benefited from massive government support. Britain's biggest house builders have made more than £31 billion in profits in the last 12 years, thanks in part to Help to Buy subsidies from the taxpayer. By next year, Homes England expects to have lent an incredible £29 billion to would-be buyers, fueling property transactions and accounting for up to 48% of the new build market for more than a decade. It's allowed companies to pay hundreds of millions of pounds in bonuses, as well as return £14 billion to shareholders. And at the centre of this crisis are walls like these, covered in combustible cladding, once thought to make buildings more attractive. In the aftermath of Grenfell, buildings regulations have been upturned, retrospectively labelling swathes of apartment blocks as unsafe and making them impossible to borrow against or sell.
But I think the government needs to take some responsibility as well, because it's them who signed off on the buildings, it's them who created the regulations. And for a building like ours under 18 metres that they're talking about today, those materials, combustible materials, are still legal to be used on our building. So how can you go after the developers and say you should be paying to fix this when the government themselves are still saying in regulation it's fine for you to use it? Those two things don't add up.
In Bristol, leaseholders in a building over 18 metres, which already qualifies for funding, say they still haven't received a penny.
I'm not confident that we'll get any money, to be honest. Yes, there is a pot of 5.1 billion available for buildings like ours, but yeah, we've not seen a penny.
Steph Pike is a solicitor who says she now faces bankruptcy, which would also cost her her legal career.
I just feel like the government are kind of drip feeding us with possible solutions, and yes, everything they announce is a welcome step forward, but there's never been a comprehensive solution.
Shares in the big developers took a tumble today as the government seemingly turned on a sector it's normally allied with. But while the war of words rages between ministers and industry, those on the ground facing financial ruin worry if the changes will be enough to save them.
Well, the Conservative MP Stephen McPartland has long campaigned for leaseholders in their calls for compensation and joins us now from Central Lobby. And I know you've largely welcomed this, but as we saw from that report, it's still left a lot of people desperately worried about their own futures. It doesn't go far enough.
Oh, very much so. I think we do need some clarifications, but firstly, it is important that we welcome it. I mean, this is an additional £4 billion on top of the £5 billion. So the campaign over the last 15, 18 months, the leaseholders up and down the country, it's a victory for them. We've got over £9 billion worth of support, and the principle that those responsible are going to pay and leaseholders are the innocent party. So that is very welcome news for leaseholders this evening.
Michael Gove was unable to say that if people have actually already taken on the debt, that the government will be able to compensate them. I mean, that's outrageously unfair, isn't it?
Well, I think it's understandable because we're talking about, it's a statement today in the building safety bill. So I think what Michael's trying to do is make the problem as concise as possible and try and identify where we are. Because there are some clarifications. For example, there's a lot of talk about cladding, which is an external fire safety defect. But we need clarification that's also going to include internal fire safety defects. So, for example, fire breaks, and that stops fire spreading from flat to flat within inside the building. So I pushed them today in the Commons to actually ask them to ensure that that would also be included. So obviously there is a lot of detail that needs to still come out, but it is a big step forward today.
I mean, it has to be said, there are also people who are very sceptical from the Grenfell campaign who feel this is a premature announcement that doesn't actually answer all the questions and is just designed to make Michael Gove look good.
Well, I can assure them that that's not the case. I've been holding their feet to the fire alongside my colleagues in Parliament. The fire safety bill we sent back from the House of Lords a number of times. We've really pushed ministers on. The government, sacked the previous Secretary of State, and there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to actually get us to where we are. And the principles that we wanted was that the leaseholders are the innocent parties, and those responsible must pay.
What do you think it says? I mean, you were very critical of Robert Jenrick, the one who was sacked. What do you think it says about this government that it took Michael Gove to come in and look at it again?
Well, I think it shows that the government's actually listened on this occasion, because Michael has sat down and listened with us. He's been incredibly constructive. He's worked with myself, other members of Parliament, cross-party, and also the leasehold groups themselves. And a lot of what he's announced is what we've actually been talking about and asking for, which is the government providing the funds up front and then helping us to pursue those responsible. So, it is a really great welcome. Going to be 100% right tonight, but we do have to welcome the fact that we are getting there.